What makes someone say, "I do," to a person the state has sentenced to capital punishment? Is it love? Obsession? A need to believe in someone the world rejected? These are the most unexpected marriages, vows exchanged with people waiting for their final day. Richard Glossop, born in 1963, was managing the best budget inn in Oklahoma City when he was convicted of planning the elimination of the motel's owner, a conviction based almost entirely on the word of the man who carried it out. While facing the harshest penalty under the law, Glossop's time behind bars wasn't just defined by court hearings and close calls with scheduled sentence dates. Behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding. In March 2022, Glossop married Leah Roger, a 32-year-old advocate from Florida who had long spoken out against capital punishment. Their story began in 2016, when Roger sent him a Christmas card as part of a prison outreach program. What started as a simple gesture turned into daily phone calls, years of growing trust, and eventually, love. Now a law student, Roger stood by Glossop through delays, court battles, and 3 scheduled sentence dates. They were married inside Oklahoma State Penitentiary in a quiet ceremony. For a brief moment, they were allowed to hold hands and share a quick kiss, rare human contact in a place built to keep people apart. But this wasn't Glossop's first prison marriage. In 2018, he married Leah Joy Jurisic, a 21-year-old student from New Jersey training to become a funeral director. They had never met in person before the ceremony, only letters and phone calls. Her family had doubts at first, but eventually came around. Still, the marriage didn't last. By 2021, the relationship had ended in divorce. Jurisic didn't attend the final hearing, and records show she was ordered to pay Glossop $5,000 in alimony and $3,500 in legal costs. Later, reports claimed she believed she had been taken advantage of. But the next case? Let's just say she was ready to risk everything, and she did. Hank Skinner was born in 1962 in Danville, Virginia. Hank Skinner's on row in Texas for the 1993 passings of his partner, Twyla Busby, and her 2 adult sons, Randy Busby and Elwin Scooter Kaler. He has long maintained his innocence, claiming he was unconscious during the incident and later pushed for DNA testing to support his case. While awaiting his final punishment, Hank Skinner formed an unexpected bond with Sandrine Ajorgia, a French national and lifelong opponent of capital punishment. She had spent decades fighting against it, writing to inmates and joining protests. But with Skinner, things got personal. Their connection grew quickly, and in 2008 they got married. From that point on, Sandrine became one of his fiercest advocates. She pushed his case into the international spotlight, rallying support from the French government and calling for new DNA testing. But the system pushed back. At one point, she was banned from visiting or even writing to him, accused of breaking prison rules, a claim she denied. The prison wouldn't release the records, and the reason for the ban was never made clear. Still, Sandrine didn't stop. She stayed by his side through every legal delay, every denied appeal. His case sparked debate about justice, DNA testing, and what the system owes the people it condemns. By late 2022, Skinner's health took a sharp turn. He had surgery to remove a brain tumor in December, but complications followed. On February 16, 2023, months before his next sentence date, Hank Skinner passed away at Hospital Galveston in Texas. The next case left behind one of the most bizarre and unsettling prison love stories in modern history. Richard Ramirez was born on February 29, 1960, in El Paso, Texas. In 1984, Ramirez moved to California, and his harmful actions escalated. Between April 1984 and August 1985, he was responsible for causing the passing of at least 15 people. His behavior was unpredictable, and he targeted people at random, instilling fear across communities in Los Angeles and the San Francisco Bay Area. Residents recognized him from police sketches, which led to his capture after a failed carjacking attempt. During his trial, the evidence pointed to his involvement in 13 cases. In November 1989, he was given the harshest sentence. Doreen Leoy, a 41-year-old magazine editor from San Rafael, California, seemed like the last person anyone would expect to fall for a man like Richard Ramirez, the man the world knew as the Night Stalker. But in 1988, after seeing him on the news and reading about his trial, she started writing him letters. What began as curiosity quickly turned into obsession. But before we get into the details, make sure to like and subscribe for more chilling stories. Despite his conviction, Leoy believed Ramirez was innocent. She described him not as a monster, but as kind, funny, charming, and her best friend. Over time, their connection grew. Leoy visited him regularly at San Quentin State Prison, sometimes as often as 4 times a week. She defended him in interviews, publicly denounced the evidence, and alienated friends and family who couldn't understand her devotion. On October 3, 1996, after years of letters, visits, and unwavering belief, Doreen Leoy married Richard Ramirez inside the prison walls. His brother, sister, and niece were present. Her own family refused to attend. The ceremony wasn't typical, and neither was the groom. Ramirez, a self-proclaimed Satanist, refused to wear a gold wedding band, saying, "Satanists don't wear gold." Instead, he wore a platinum ring. Leoy, who had been raised Catholic and was a virgin at the time of the marriage, insisted her love for him was real and pure, despite everything. But cracks started to show. In 2009, when new DNA evidence linked Ramirez to the passing of a 9-year-old girl, even Leoy, who had stood by him through everything, began to pull away. The relationship quietly fell apart, though they never officially divorced. When Ramirez died in 2013 of complications from cancer, Doreen Leoy vanished from the public eye. The woman who once declared she'd take her own life if Ramirez was gone simply disappeared. Now, imagine saying, "I do" to someone known for ending the lives of her previous partners. This brings us to James. James Thomas Hogan was born on June 17, 1957. He was convicted for the elimination of Teresa Holland and her 22-month-old son Jeremy during a brutal incident at their home in California. While awaiting his final sentence, James Thomas Hogan began a relationship with Mary Ellen Samuels, a woman whose own past was infamous. Mary Ellen had been convicted for arranging the eliminations of both her estranged husband, Robert Samuels, and James Bernstein, the man she hired to make it happen. After Robert's passing, she feared Bernstein might talk, so she had him silenced too. Her story made headlines: a crumbling marriage, a life insurance payout, and a sudden shift into flashy clothes, vacations, and lavish spending. The media dubbed her the Green Widow. But behind prison walls, a different kind of story was unfolding. She and Hogan began writing to each other. What started as letters turned into something more, a connection between two people society had cast out. Eventually, they married. Psychologists say these kinds of relationships are often about control, fantasy, or even comfort. Some people are drawn to the idea of rescuing someone damaged. Others find safety in the emotional distance. A relationship where the rules are clear, the boundaries firm, and the risk of betrayal low. In Hogan and Mary Ellen's case, it was a meeting of two lives shaped by destruction, but somehow they found each other in the middle of it. On the day his sentence was carried out, Hogan was offered a final meal but declined any special request. He was given the standard meal but chose not to eat. When asked for any final words, he expressed remorse and said, "I'm responsible for what brought me here, and I take full responsibility for my actions." He apologized to the families of those who lost their lives, as well as to his own family, acknowledging the pain his actions caused. Hogan's life was ended by the state on June 17, 1999, at Florida State Prison. But what happens when visiting your brother leads to falling for his fellow inmate? The twist in the next story might surprise you. Ernest Willis was born in Texas in 1941 and spent his early life working as a laborer and truck driver, with no serious legal trouble until a fire in April 1986 changed everything. While staying temporarily in a house in Irene, Texas, a fire broke out that led to the passings of two women, Jeannie Lynch and Sue Huckabee. Investigators became suspicious of Ernest due to his calm behavior, which may have been caused by high doses of anti-anxiety medication he was given while in custody. Despite weak evidence, no accelerants were found and no motive was proven, he was accused of setting the fire on purpose. In 1987, he was found responsible for arson and received the ultimate state-sanctioned penalty. Ernest Harbin and Veralyn Harbin's relationship began within the confines of a correctional facility, where Ernest was serving a sentence. Veralyn, the sister of fellow inmate Ricky McGinn, frequently visited her brother, and during these visits, she encountered Ernest. Their initial interactions were brief and casual, but over time, they developed a connection that extended beyond the prison walls. They began exchanging letters, sharing their thoughts, experiences, and aspirations. These written communications evolved into regular phone conversations, deepening their emotional bond. Despite the challenges posed by Ernest's incarceration, their relationship flourished, grounded in mutual understanding and support. Their commitment eventually led to marriage, held in a quiet prison ceremony. There were no guests, no celebration, just the exchange of vows and the paperwork to make it official. In 2004, new advances in fire science revealed serious flaws in the original investigation. Independent experts testified that the fire might have been accidental. When the case was reviewed again by the courts, the evidence against Ernest fell apart. After spending 17 years in confinement under the ultimate state-sanctioned penalty for an event he did not cause, Ernest Willis was exonerated. Now, let's turn to a story that still haunts the public imagination. Ted Bundy was born as Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. He was known for being charming and intelligent, which he used to gain the trust of many. Between 1974 and 1978, Bundy admitted responsibility for the loss of 30 young women across several states. Some experts believe the true number might be even higher. In 1979, Bundy was found responsible for incidents involving 2 college students and received the ultimate sentence. In 1980, he received another final penalty for causing harm to a 12-year-old girl. While awaiting his final sentence, Ted Bundy wasn't just fighting legal battles. He was also building a relationship, one that surprised everyone. Bundy met Carol Ann Boone in 1974, while they were both working at the Washington State Department of Emergency Services during the time Bundy was already targeting victims. Boone, a recently divorced mother, saw him as charming, intelligent, and composed. Despite the growing cloud of suspicion around him, she stood by him, convinced of his innocence. As Bundy's trials gained national attention, Boone became more than a friend. She became his most vocal supporter. Then, in 1980, during Bundy's trial in Florida, he did something few could have predicted. While Boone was testifying on his behalf, Bundy proposed to her in open court, exploiting a Florida law that allowed a marriage to be declared official if done in a courtroom and in front of a judge. Boone accepted. Just like that, in the middle of a capital trial, they were legally married. 2 years later, in 1982, Boone gave birth to a daughter, Rose, while Bundy was still behind bars. There has been endless speculation about how Boone became pregnant, given the strict visitation rules, but the truth remains unclear. For a time, Boone remained fiercely loyal. But as Bundy began making detailed confessions to investigators, finally admitting to the horrific acts he had long denied, everything changed. Boone, devastated by the truth she could no longer ignore, ended the marriage in 1986. She quietly disappeared from public life, changing her and her daughter's names to protect their identities. Ted Bundy was put to his final punishment by means of an electrical process at Florida State Prison on January 24, 1989. On the morning of his final punishment, Bundy declined a special last meal and chose to have the standard breakfast provided in prison, which included steak, eggs, toast, butter, jelly, milk, coffee, and juice. He reportedly did not eat any of it. His reported last words were, "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends. Joseph Roger Odell III's life was filled with troubling events from a young age. He was born into an Irish and Cherokee family. As a teenager, he became involved in auto thefts at just 13 years old. In 1985, Odell was connected to the tragic case of Helen Shartner, a 44-year-old secretary from Virginia Beach. The prosecution's case against Odell was built on strong evidence. Despite the strong evidence, Odell consistently maintained his innocence. His case attracted international attention, and many people, including Pope John Paul II, Mother Teresa, and even the Italian government, advocated for clemency on his behalf. However, these pleas were not successful. In the final hours of Joseph Roger Odell III's life, his thoughts weren't just on the chamber. They were on Laurie Street. John, the woman who stood by him when nearly everyone else had walked away. Just hours before his sentence would be carried out, he married her. In a prison ceremony as emotional as it was surreal. Their story began in the early 1990s. Laurie, then known as Laurie Ers, joined Odell's legal team as an investigator. At first, their relationship was strictly professional, focused on fighting what she believed was a deeply flawed case. But over time, as they pored over files, dissected evidence, and wrote letters back and forth, something changed. The fight for justice became personal. As Odell's sentence date loomed, their connection grew stronger. Laurie became his loudest advocate, rallying support not just in the U.S., but internationally. The Italian government, human rights groups, and even the Pope voiced concerns over the case. Laurie traveled the world, held press conferences, and stood in front of crowds with photos, affidavits, and evidence in hand, pleading for more time, more tests, more truth. Then, in a final, desperate move, she married him. It wasn't about romance, not entirely. Their marriage, held through the bars of his cell and officiated by the prison chaplain, was a mix of love, strategy, and protest. They weren't even allowed to touch. By marrying Odell, Laurie gained legal control over crucial evidence, including the right to fight for DNA testing that could have possibly changed everything. Their union was as much a legal maneuver as it was a personal vow, a final stand against a system she believed was rushing to end an innocent man's life. On July 23, 1997, Odell's sentence was carried out at the Greensville Correctional Center in Virginia. His case was marked by controversy, largely due to forensic evidence that could have potentially helped his case. Laurie stood outside the prison gates, surrounded by international press and supporters, still fighting for his name, and for the right to test the evidence he insisted would clear him. He requested advanced DNA testing, which might have proven his innocence, but Virginia authorities denied his request. This decision was based on a rule stating that evidence discovered after 21 days could not be used for post-conviction appeals, which limited his legal options. But to this day, she continues to push for posthumous DNA testing. Odell's final words were a simple but powerful message to his wife. "To my wife, Laurie, I love you. I love you for all eternity. I love you. That's it." Odell's final meal request was not made public. After his passing, Odell's body was sent to Palermo, Italy for burial, fulfilling his and Laurie's wish. The city of Palermo even honored him by lowering its flag to half-staff in his memory. Now imagine a scenario where someone who did things beyond imagination marries two successful men behind bars. This brings us to Susan. Susan Atkins was born on May 7, 1948 in San Gabriel, California. Her early life was unstable. Her mother passed away from cancer when Susan was 15. Her father was often not around, which led her to leave high school. Later, she moved to San Francisco and joined the counterculture scene. In 1967, Susan met Charles Manson. She became one of his most devoted followers and took on the name Sadie Mae Glutz. She was involved with the group known as the Manson family. In August 1969, following Manson's orders, Atkins took part in an unsettling event at the home of actress Sharon Tate. In this event, Tate, who was 8 months pregnant, and 4 other people lost their lives. Atkins later admitted that she used a sharp object on Tate. She also wrote the word pig on the front door using Tate's body fluids. During the trial, Atkins helped the authorities at first but later changed her statement. She was found guilty. In 1971, she was given a sentence of capital punishment. In 1972, the California Supreme Court changed her sentence to a term of life imprisonment. While behind bars, Susan Atkins, once one of Charles Manson's most notorious followers, underwent a transformation she claimed was spiritual. In prison, she became a born-again Christian, distancing herself from the chilling past that made her a household name. She shared her story in the autobiography Child of Satan, Child of God, where she described her journey from cult member to redeemed believer. But not everyone was convinced. In 1981, Atkins married Donald Lee Lazier, a man who claimed to be a millionaire and had reportedly been married dozens of times before. The marriage fell apart quickly when it became clear that Lazier's stories didn't add up. The union was annulled not long after it began, but in 1987 she married again, this time to James Whitehouse, a Harvard Law School graduate who would later serve as her legal representative. Unlike the first marriage, this one lasted. Whitehouse stayed by her side, filing appeals, speaking to the media, and fighting for her release for years. At the time, California law allowed married inmates to receive visits from their spouses. Atkins' marriages, especially her second to James Whitehouse, made her eligible for these visits. This arrangement was maintained even though many families of the affected individuals were unhappy with it. Despite her claims of rehabilitation and deep religious devotion, Atkins was denied parole 13 times. The parole board repeatedly cited the brutal nature of what she did and the lasting trauma to the victims' families. No amount of time served or personal change could erase her role in the Manson murders. In 2008, things took a sharp turn. Atkins was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. The disease left her bedridden, partially paralyzed, and unable to speak for long. Her husband pleaded for compassionate release, arguing that she posed no threat to anyone. Even the prison's own doctors agreed she had only months to live. Still, the answer was no. The board refused, stating that even in her state, the severity of the incidents outweighed her condition. The families of the victims spoke out against her release, and the public echoed their outrage. On September 24, 2009, Susan Atkins passed away at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla, the same prison where she had spent the final decades of her life. Her last reported words were, "My God is an amazing God." James Bryley Jr. was born on June 6, 1956, in Richmond, Virginia. He grew up in the Highland Park neighborhood with his brothers, Linwood and Anthony. As young men, the brothers were known in their community for helping neighbors with tasks like mowing lawns and fixing cars. They also kept unusual pets, such as tarantulas and piranhas. However, their home life was troubled because their parents separated. Their father, James Sr., reportedly kept his bedroom door locked at night for safety. James's behavior became increasingly serious over time. In 1979, he and his brothers went on a 7-month elimination spree in Richmond. The victims came from different parts of the community. Among them were a 76-year-old woman, a 17-year-old boy, and a family of 3 that included a pregnant woman and a 5-year-old child. James was found guilty. He received 2 capital sentences for his involvement in the incidents that took the lives of Judy Barton and her son, Harvey. While on row, James Bryley formed an unlikely connection with Evangeline Grant Redding, a 44-year-old writer and former television personality from Halifax, North Carolina. Their relationship began through letters, after Evangeline reached out to him upon learning about his case. What started as correspondence soon deepened. She visited him in prison, and over time she came to believe he was innocent. That belief, combined with their growing emotional bond, led to a decision few could understand. They would get married. On March 28, 1985, just steps away from the prison's sentence chamber, Bryley and Redding were married inside the Virginia State Penitentiary. His father, James Sr., attended the ceremony. Due to strict prison rules, they were only allowed to hold hands briefly and share a short kiss. Evangeline was searched for personal items before the event, which was held in silence. No music, no guests beyond immediate approval. After the wedding, she publicly defended Bryley, insisting he had been wrongly convicted and vowing to clear his name. For Evangeline, the marriage wasn't just emotional. It was a statement of loyalty, defiance, and belief in a man the state had condemned. James Bryley's capital sentence was carried out by electrocution on April 18, 1985, at the Virginia State Penitentiary. This occurred after his final legal appeals were not accepted. In his final moments, James Bryley smiled at those present and asked them twice, "Are you happy?" His final meal included fried shrimp with cocktail sauce and a lemon-lime-flavored soft drink.